Hello early friends, today I have a rather casual video for you. I want to talk about a couple of things today, and they deal primarily with writing advice, the idea of ultimacy, and the idea of the Writers Toolbox. So let's dive right in. In case you don't know, I've been running a writing advice blog for like 3 years now, over at maxkirin.tumblr.com. I've been doing a lot of writing advice, and prompts, and seeds, and writer positivity, and lots of stuff like that. This of course is not an ad for that, it's just merely a prelude to explain the reason for this video. I get a lot of questions every day. Like, I get enough questions on Tumblr that it's almost impossible for me to answer all of them. That is why tweeting at me, at Mr. Kirin, is like the easiest way to get a hold of me and get me to answer your question because, yeah, it takes me way too long to answer. It takes me way too long to answer things on Tumblr. That being said, what I like to do is I like to grab multiple questions that are really similar in tone and feeling and group them together so that I can answer them in one go, and the people who had questions can have their answers ASAP. And recently, I don't know why, like, things are in flux on Tumblr and on other places, so whenever something changes, I hear about it through people's questions, and I want to talk about writing advice today. The thing is this, okay, like 3 times a week, I'm here on your YouTube screen telling you what I think, and I like to prelude that every time whenever I'm giving writing advice with a disclaimer, letting you know that that is merely just the way I do things. My point of view, my perspective, and the advice that I've made for myself, or have somehow modified so that it works for me. That is the way that I go about selling things. I'm not telling you, like, the best, #1, best of all time, do this or you will fail advice, because that's meaningless and silly, and that slides right into the idea of ultimacy. I get a lot of people all the time telling me that they read this piece of advice and it's either like do this or you're gonna fail, and that sort of advice I like to warn people against. Not because it's immediately bad, but it's because that sort of idea kind of limits the concept of writing. Writing is a craft without hard rules. Any sort of thing that can be called a hard rule, there's an exception to that. There's exceptions to everything, and that's kind of the nature of writing. And the idea of advice that is ultimate, that is kind of like do this or you will fail, kind of, I don't want to say that it bothers me because it makes it seem like a personal thing, but I feel that there's a better way to go about doing things. If you're familiar with my blog, there's one book that I've been recommending forever, and I will recommend it until the day I die. My favorite book on the subject of writing is On Writing by Stephen King, a memoir of the craft. It's a really awesome book. It's half memoir, half writing advice, really well formatted, really well written, and one of the things about that book that I like is that it has a section on what Stephen King calls the Writers Toolbox. And this toolbox is basically an imaginary toolbox that holds all of the tools that you use for writing, whether it is things like grammar and syntax and everything else that you have picked up along the way. Now, why is this concept cool? Why do I like this concept? That is because every toolbox is different for every person, and you, as an individual and as a writer who is their own person, you can make your own toolbox. And it's not the idea of making your own rules, but it's rather the concept of taking the rules that you like, the rules that mean a lot to you, the rules that resonate with you, and putting them in your toolbox and using them. You don't have to use everything that is out there, and you don't have to agree with everything that's out there. We're all different writers, but you have to find the right tools for the job. This was easier for me to learn because I came from a pen and paper role-playing game sort of background, where, like, the golden rule of pen and paper role-playing games is that you can always modify them. You can always modify the rules, you can make your own rules, you can change it to make it work for you and your party and your friends. So when I came into writing, I came in with that mentality. It was the idea of, like, I would read writing advice and I'm like, okay, what do I like from this? What do I take from this? What do I not like? And what will I carry with me and move on? And I want you to take this from this video, okay? And it's the idea that you as a writer, regardless of how old you are, regardless of whether you've been to college or university or none of those things, you can still make your own toolbox, and it can be as legitimate and as important as anyone else's. And yes, I know what some of you may be thinking. There are some rules in writing that are pretty close to hard rules, or there are rather rules that a lot of people have agreed upon, and that's okay. That doesn't make them ultimate, though. And I don't think that any rule in writing should come before the story that you're writing. And if one of your stories demands that you break one of those rules, then go bravely and do it. Ultimately, we're here to tell stories, and you have to find the right tool for the job. Which brings me to stealing tools, hacking tools, modding tools. When I give you writing advice, and when you go out and read other writing advice, what I want you to do is this, okay? Regardless of what the person says, always take it as their tools, and you, as the writer, as the single individual who has the ability to create whatever you want, you can take those tools and modify them. You can break them apart. You can do whatever you want with them. And I empower you to do so, to make your own toolbox, your own set of tools and skills and talents that you can use for your own writing. Again, for me, this is a little bit weird because I came from a background where where that's expected, where like, you know, when you're playing a pen and paper role-playing game, you make your own monsters, you make your own dungeons, you make your own characters and your own mechanics. So for me, when I moved into writing, that mentality stayed with me. It's just sort of the golden rule of pen and paper role-playing games. You can always change things. You have the permission of the author to modify it to whatever works for you. And thus, I want to inspire you to have the idea of the toolbox in your mind when you go about listening to my advice, to anyone's advice. You know, advice is not ultimate. It is ultimately just advice. It is people talking about their opinions and their point of view. And you can understand someone's point of view and don't agree with it, because ultimately, we're just writers telling stories, and there are multiple ways to tell stories. Again, I know that this has been a little bit of a short video, but I just wanted to talk about this concept and the idea of the Writers Toolbox. And if you want to read more about that, I recommend you pick up On Writing by Stephen King. It's my favorite book on writing. Whenever I feel down about writing, I pick up and I read that book, or I listen to the audiobook because it's awesome, because he actually reads it and you get that extra 10% from him reading his own work. It's actually really special. But, you know, remember the idea that like, there are no hard rules, and like, forget what your English teacher told you. I empower you to look at all the things you've been told and analyze them, break them down, and take the ones that you like and spit away the ones you don't care about, and move on and keep seeking to learn. Because I think in writing, and I don't want to, of course, make it sound like a hard rule, but I think like, you gotta keep looking out to grow. You gotta keep looking out for new talents, new abilities, new skills you can learn. Because writing is an ever-growing medium. You can't master writing. There is no cap to the skill points you can pour into this. You can just keep pouring more and more and more, and just dedicate more time to the craft. Continue reading, continue writing, continue searching to find other ways to do things. But I digress. Once again, in summary, my thoughts on the idea of writing advice is that remember that everyone is just sharing their point of view. Even if they sell it as though it is the most real, important thing that you need to know, it is ultimately their point of view and their advice. And really, you can disarm that. You can disarm that, you can break it down, and you can create something that works for you. I give you the permission to look at my work and my writing advice and my content and make it something that works for you. And if you find something that works better, then let me know, because I am also looking out to continue improving and to continue growing, because we're in a craft where no one becomes master. And again, one last thing, you have a toolbox, a collection of accessories and techniques and things that you picked up along the way. And you can use these to tell stories, and you are using them without thinking about it. But remember that some of them may have been given to you, and you may have claimed them without thinking about it. So take a moment to analyze them, and consider the ones that you truly care about, and you consider them to be meaningful and integral to your creative process, and keep those. And the rest, scavenge them, break them into pieces, mesh them together, create something that works just for you. And I hope that helps, and I hope that, if anything, I've shown you my point of view and my way to go about doing things. I want to thank you for watching. If you would like even more writing advice, you can head over to my official writing blog over at maxkirin.tumblr.com. As always, thank you for watching, thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me, and I'll be seeing you soon! Mwah!